Emma Brooks heard the scream before she saw the blood. The sound echoed through the marble hallway of Blackwood Manor, bouncing off ceilings so high they disappeared into darkness. A silver serving tray crashed somewhere upstairs. Glass shattered. Footsteps thundered. Then, silence. Emma gripped the handle of her cleaning cart tighter. She had only been inside the mansion for 32 minutes. Already, she wanted to leave. Rain pounded against the enormous windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Lightning briefly illuminated the endless estate. Black SUVs lined the circular driveway. Men in expensive black suits stood motionless beneath umbrellas despite the storm. None of them smiled. None of them spoke. The temporary cleaning agency had described the job as simple. Luxury estate. Excellent pay. One-day assignment. Nothing about this place felt simple. Emma adjusted the name badge clipped to her gray cleaning uniform. Her supervisor had called just before dawn. Last-minute emergency. Another cleaner quit. They're paying triple. Emma had almost refused. But overdue rent had a way of making impossible decisions feel reasonable. So here she was, inside the largest private mansion she had ever seen, trying not to notice the armed security guards stationed every 20 feet. A housekeeper hurried toward her, an older woman with silver hair tightly pinned beneath a neat bun. Her face looked exhausted. "You." Emma looked up. "Yes?" "The West Wing." The woman handed her a polished brass key. "Third floor." Emma smiled politely. "I was told to clean the library first." Plans changed. The housekeeper's voice became strangely urgent. "Do not enter any room except the one marked on the key." Emma frowned. "Why?" The woman hesitated, then quietly answered, "Because everyone else already has." Before Emma could ask what that meant, the woman walked away, almost hurried away. Emma stared at the key. West Wing Room 307. An uncomfortable feeling settled in her stomach. She wasn't superstitious, but she had worked in enough wealthy homes to recognize when employees avoided certain places. Usually, it meant family drama, messy divorces, locked rooms, secrets. She sighed, clean the room, collect the paycheck, go home. That was the plan. The West Wing was unnaturally quiet. Unlike the rest of the mansion, there were no servants, no security guards, no voices, only the distant ticking of an antique grandfather clock. Her footsteps echoed softly across polished walnut floors. Portraits of generations long dead watched her from gold frames. The air smelled faintly of cedarwood and expensive cologne. Room 301. 303. 304. Then, 307. Emma inserted the brass key. For some reason, her hands trembled. The lock clicked. She slowly pushed open the heavy wooden door. Warm afternoon sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. For a brief moment, everything seemed perfectly normal. Then she noticed the walls. Photographs. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. Every wall, every shelf, every corner. All of them showed the same woman. Hair. Emma's breath caught. What? She stepped inside. The door slowly closed behind her. Every photograph captured a different moment of her life. Emma at a public library reading on a rainy afternoon. Emma feeding pigeons in Grant Park. Emma carrying groceries after work. Emma laughing with her late mother outside a small bakery. Emma walking home during the first snowfall of winter. Some photographs had obviously been taken years apart. Some were so recent. She recognized the sweater she had worn only last month. No, she whispered. This isn't real. Her pulse quickened. She walked closer. None of the pictures looked stolen from social media. They weren't posed. They were candid. Someone had watched her. For years. Quietly. Patiently. Without her ever noticing. A chill ran down her spine. She turned toward the bookshelves. Another impossible discovery. Every shelf contained books she had read. Not famous bestsellers. Her favorites. The old edition of Little Women with the blue cover. A worn copy of Pride and Prejudice identical to the one she'd lost during college. The poetry collection she borrowed from the public library every autumn. Even the detective novels she secretly loved but never admitted buying. Emma slowly pulled one from the shelf. Inside the cover, a small handwritten note. For Emma. No signature. She backed away. No. Her voice trembled. This isn't possible. Then she smelled it. Fresh jasmine tea. She turned toward the fireplace. A porcelain teapot rested on a silver tray. Steam still curled gently into the air. Beside it sat the exact honey biscuits she always bought from the tiny bakery 2 blocks from her apartment. Her favorite mug. Cream-colored, tiny blue flowers painted around the rim. Exactly like the one she'd broken 6 months earlier. Emma's knees weakened. Someone knew her too well. A vintage record player quietly began playing music. Soft piano. She froze. It was her mother's favorite song. The melody Emma listened to every birthday since losing her. Tears blurred her vision. Who, she whispered, would do this? The room wasn't merely decorated. It had been designed. The curtains matched the ones she'd once admired in a department store window. The blanket folded neatly across the enormous bed was identical to the one she'd saved online but could never afford. Fresh white lilies stood inside crystal vases. Her favorite flowers. Every detail, every object, every color, every scent. Nothing belonged to coincidence. Everything belonged to her. It was as though someone had reached into her heart and built it into a room. Emma stumbled backward until she hit the edge of the bed. She wanted to run. She should have run. Instead, her curiosity kept her rooted to the floor. On the bedside table rested a small leather journal. No lock, no name, just one date embossed in gold. April 14. Her birthday. Hand shaking, Emma opened it. The first page contained only one sentence. She smiled today. Nothing else. The second page. She finally bought the blue umbrella. Third page. She looked tired. She skipped lunch again. Fourth page. She cried after leaving the hospital. Emma stopped breathing. The entries continued. Month after month. Year after year. Not observations. Worries. Someone had documented her life. Not like a stalker collecting trophies. Like a guardian keeping a promise. A soft click echoed behind her. The bedroom door. Emma spun around. A tall man stood quietly in the doorway. Black tailored suit. White dress shirt. No tie. Dark hair combed perfectly back. Sharp jawline. Eyes so calm they were almost frightening. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need one. Power surrounded him like silence before a storm. Emma had seen his face before. On newspapers, business magazines, television, people spoke his name in whispers. Lorenzo Moretti, the billionaire no one questioned. The man rumors insisted controlled half of Chicago's criminal underworld. The Mafia Boss. Neither of them moved. Neither spoke. The rain outside grew louder. Emma tightened her grip on the leather journal. You. Her voice barely worked. Who are you? His expression never changed. You already know. She swallowed hard. Did you? She looked around the impossible bedroom. Do this? A long silence. Then, yes. One simple word. No apology. No denial. Only truth. Emma's heart pounded against her ribs. Why? Lorenzo's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for her. I've been waiting. His deep voice filled the room. For you to finally come home. Emma stared at him. She had never seen this man before in her life. Yet somehow, he spoke as though he had been waiting for her for years. And in that moment, a terrifying realization settled over her. The room hadn't been prepared yesterday, or last week, or even last year. Someone had built it long before she ever accepted the cleaning job. Long before fate had brought her to Blackwood Manor. Someone had been waiting. For her. Emma couldn't breathe. The leather journal slipped from her trembling fingers and landed softly on the velvet rug. Lorenzo Moretti didn't move. Neither did she. Outside, thunder rolled across the Chicago skyline, rattling the tall windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Inside the bedroom, silence became heavier than the storm. I don't know you. Emma finally managed to speak. Her voice shook despite every effort to steady it. Lorenzo's expression remained unreadable. No, you don't. She frowned. What is that supposed to mean? It means exactly what I said. He slowly stepped inside the room. The polished wooden door closed quietly behind him. Not slammed, not locked, simply closed. The sound somehow frightened her more. Emma instinctively took one step backward. You've been following me? I've been protecting you. Those aren't the same thing? No, they feel exactly the same. Another silence. Lorenzo studied her carefully. Not her body, not her appearance. Her eyes, as though trying to determine whether she was about to run. She looked around the room again. Hundreds of photographs. Her books, her favorite music, everything she loved. Everything she had never told anyone. Her heart pounded harder. How long? Lorenzo answered immediately. 12 years. Emma stared at him. 12. She almost laughed. Years? He nodded once. The answer wasn't exaggerated. If anything, it sounded too simple. 12 years. Emma repeated. You've watched my entire adult life? I made sure you survived it. I never asked you to. No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. She pointed toward the photographs covering every wall. This is obsession. No. His calm voice never rose. This is preparation. Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. For what? His gaze slowly moved across the bedroom. This room? No. She shook her head. I mean, she looked directly at him. Why build it? Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment. Because I knew one day, his voice became almost quiet, you would need somewhere no one could ever hurt you again. Again. That word lingered. Emma noticed immediately. Again? He didn't answer. She stepped closer. What happened to me? Still silence. You keep talking as if something terrible already happened. Lorenzo looked away, toward the rain outside. His jaw tightened. You don't remember. I can't remember something that never happened. It did. Before Emma could press further, a knock interrupted them. 3 sharp knocks. The bedroom door opened. A gray-haired butler entered, nearly 70 years old. Perfect posture. Immaculate suit, Mr. Moretti. He paused after noticing Emma. His eyes softened. Miss Brooks. Emma frowned. You know my name too? The butler smiled gently. I've known your name for quite some time. Emma slowly looked from the butler, back to Lorenzo, then toward the photographs. An impossible thought formed. Everyone inside this mansion already knew who she was. She was the only stranger. Sir, the butler's tone changed. They've arrived. Lorenzo's eyes darkened immediately. How many? 8 vehicles. Emma noticed the subtle shift. Until that moment, he had looked almost human. Now, the Mafia Boss returned. Cold, emotionless, dangerously calm. Stay here. He turned toward the door. Emma spoke before he reached it. No. He stopped. I have questions. You'll have answers. When? When you're safe. I'm standing in the house of a man who secretly photographed me for 12 years. She folded her arms. I don't feel safe. For the first time, Lorenzo almost smiled. You should. Why? Because no one in this city, he looked directly into her eyes, is safer than the woman standing inside this room. Another knock, this time louder. One of the bodyguards stepped inside. Boss. What? The Romano delegation is demanding entry. Emma caught the unfamiliar name. Romano. Lorenzo's expression didn't change. They're early. They're angry. They usually are. Emma watched the conversation carefully. Something had changed. The atmosphere inside the mansion felt heavier. The guards outside began running through the hallways. She heard doors locking downstairs. Engines outside. Black SUVs. Radio chatter. Something was happening. She stepped toward the window. Dozens of black luxury SUVs had entered the enormous front courtyard. Men wearing expensive suits exited one after another. Every single one carried concealed weapons. Some openly, none smiled. The rain soaked their jackets, yet they walked with terrifying confidence. Emma whispered, "Who are they?" Lorenzo joined her at the window. "Our guests. They don't look like guests." "They're not." The mansion gate slowly opened. Another convoy entered. Emma counted. 1, 3, 6, 10 vehicles. At least 40 armed men. She swallowed. Should I call the police? One nearby bodyguard actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because the idea was impossible. Lorenzo answered calmly, "The police won't come." "Why not?" "They already know who's visiting." Emma looked at him. "And?" "They'll wait until everyone leaves." Fear settled deeper inside her chest. "What exactly are you?" Lorenzo remained silent. "I've heard rumors." He still said nothing. She looked toward the courtyard again, then quietly asked, "Are they true?" His answer came without hesitation. "Most of them aren't." "And the rest?" He looked outside. The rest. A black umbrella opened below. An older man stepped from the lead SUV. Silver hair, perfectly tailored charcoal overcoat, cold blue eyes. Lorenzo's chaza hardened. "Are worse." The front doors of Blackwood Manor opened. The older man entered, surrounded by armed bodyguards. Every servant immediately lowered their eyes. No one spoke. The man removed his leather gloves one finger at a time. His voice echoed through the enormous entrance hall. "Lorenzo." No greeting, no smile, only challenge. Emma watched everything from the second-floor balcony. The older man looked wealthy, powerful, dangerous. Yet something about him felt different from Lorenzo. Lorenzo inspired silence. This man inspired fear. "Who is he?" Emma whispered. The butler answered quietly beside her. "Victor Romano." She looked at him. "The Romano Syndicate." Emma's stomach tightened. Even she knew that name. Chicago newspapers never printed it directly, but everyone understood. If the Moretti family ruled the city's shadows, the Romanos ruled the blood beneath them. Below? Victor smiled politely. "Beautiful mansion." Lorenzo answered, "You didn't come to admire architecture." "No, I came because you lied." Silence spread through the grand foyer. Every bodyguard subtly shifted position. Hands drifted closer to concealed weapons. "What did I lie about?" Lorenzo asked. Victor slowly removed an envelope from inside his coat, then placed it upon the marble table. "You said." He looked toward the staircase. "You had no weakness." Emma couldn't hear everything, but she saw Lorenzo freeze. Only slightly, barely noticeable. Victor noticed too. His smile widened. The envelope opened. Dozens of photographs spilled across the marble. Emma couldn't see them clearly from upstairs. Then one photograph slid toward the edge. She recognized herself immediately. Standing outside a grocery store, holding flowers. Her blood ran cold. Victor looked directly toward the second floor. Toward her, their eyes met. He smiled, not kindly, like a hunter spotting prey. "There she is." Everything happened at once. Lorenzo stepped directly between Victor and the staircase. Bodyguards drew weapons. Dozens of pistols. The mansion exploded into motion. Emma instinctively stepped backward. The butler grabbed her wrist. "Miss Brooks." His voice became urgent. "We have to go." "What?" "Now." "Below." Victor laughed softly. "So." He slowly adjusted his cuffs. The rumors were true. Lorenzo said nothing. "All these years." Victor continued, "I searched for your weakness." He looked toward Emma again. "And she was cleaning your house." Emma's heart stopped. Cleaning the mansion. It hadn't been coincidence. The agency. The emergency call. The temporary assignment. Someone had wanted her inside Blackwood Manor. The butler hurried her down a narrow side corridor. She glanced back one final time. Lorenzo stood alone at the bottom of the staircase, facing nearly 50 armed men. Completely calm, completely still. He never looked away from Victor. Yet somehow, he spoke directly to Emma, without turning around, without raising his voice. "Emma." She stopped. His next words echoed through the mansion. "If anyone but me opens that bedroom door." He finally looked up at her. Run. The lights throughout Blackwood Manor suddenly went dark. Total darkness swallowed the mansion. Then, the first gunshot shattered the silence. The first gunshot echoed through Blackwood Manor like thunder trapped inside stone walls. Emma flinched. Somewhere below, glass exploded across polished marble. Women screamed. Furniture overturned. Then came another gunshot. And another. The mansion that had seemed impossibly elegant only moments before had transformed into a battlefield. Miss Brooks. The old butler tightened his grip on her wrist. We have to move. Emma couldn't take her eyes off the grand staircase. Lorenzo hadn't moved. Not even after the lights went out. He simply stood between Victor Romano's men and the staircase leading to her. Like a wall. Like death itself. A bodyguard rushed toward Lorenzo. Boss? West entrance breached. Lorenzo never looked away from Victor. Expected. The east team? In position. The roof? Covered. Emma stared. How could he remain so calm? Bullets were flying through his own house. Yet his breathing never changed. His heartbeat never seemed to quicken. Another explosion rocked the mansion. The chandelier above the entrance hall swung violently. Crystal rained onto the marble floor. Smoke drifted through the darkness. Several servants cried out in panic. Lorenzo finally spoke. His voice was low, controlled. Take Emma below. The butler nodded immediately. Yes, sir. Emma frowned. Below where? No one answered. The butler hurried her through a narrow servants' corridor, hidden behind an enormous oak bookshelf. The bookshelf silently rotated back into place behind them. Emma stopped. What was that? A passage? This house has secret passages. It has many. They continue downward. Stone stairs spiraled beneath the mansion. The air grew colder. The scent of polished wood disappeared, replaced by damp earth and old stone. Emma's heart raced. This isn't a mansion. The butler smiled sadly. No, it never was. Above them, muffled gunfire continued. The sounds became distant as they descended deeper underground. After several flights of stairs, they reached a massive steel door. The butler placed his hand against a hidden scanner. The lock clicked. The heavy door slowly opened. Emma's eyes widened. An enormous underground command center stretched before her. Rows of surveillance screens covered one entire wall. Maps of Chicago glowed beneath blue LED lights. Luxury armored SUVs waited inside an underground garage. Doctors treated wounded guards. Computer analysts monitored traffic cameras throughout the city. Dozens of armed men moved with disciplined precision. No one panicked. Everyone had a purpose. Emma whispered, "This is impossible." It was built over 40 years. The butler closed the door behind them. Mr. Moretti inherited it. Emma slowly turned in every direction. This is... She struggled to find words. A military headquarters. It has to be. One enormous monitor displayed every security camera inside Blackwood Manor. Emma immediately searched for Lorenzo. There, standing alone inside the entrance hall, facing Victor Romano. Neither man had drawn a weapon. Neither needed to. Every person around them already had. Victor slowly applauded, even over the cameras. Emma could sense the mockery. I've underestimated you, Lorenzo answered calmly. You've underestimated her. Victor Lauhel. She's a cleaning lady. No. Lorenzo's voice remained perfectly steady. She's the reason you're leaving this house alive. Emma frowned. What does that mean? The butler remained silent. He looked almost uncomfortable. She turned toward him. You know, he lowered his eyes. I know enough. Enough about what? About why Mr. Moretti built that room. Emma stepped closer. Then tell me. He hesitated. I can't. Before Emma could press further, alarms suddenly blared throughout the command center. Red lights flashed. One of the analysts shouted, Boss's security feed. Everyone turned toward the giant screen. Emma did too. Her breath caught. Victor Romano slowly removed another envelope from inside his coat. He opened it carefully. Dozens more photographs spilled across the marble floor. Every single one showed Emma. At work, at grocery stores, walking through parks, reading in coffee shops. The same photograph she'd found upstairs. Only, these had red circles drawn around her. Dates, times, location. Emma covered her mouth. They've been watching me too. The realization struck everyone simultaneously. Lorenzo wasn't the only one observing Emma. The Romanos had been tracking her as well. For how long? No one knew. One of Lorenzo's captains muttered quietly, "So that's how they found her." The room became silent. Emma looked toward him. "What do you mean?" The captain immediately regretted speaking. The butler closed his eyes. Too late. Emma already knew. "They weren't looking for me," she whispered. "They were looking for." Her eyes slowly drifted toward Lorenzo on the monitor. His weakness. Above ground. Victor smiled. "I spent 15 years believing you had none." He looked toward the staircase. Turns out, he picked up one of Emma's photographs. She was hiding in plain sight. Lorenzo's expression remained unreadable. "Leave." "No. You've made your point. I haven't even started." Emma watched every second. She noticed something strange. Lorenzo never denied caring about her. Not once. He simply refused to discuss it. That frightened her more than any confession would have. A young analyst suddenly spoke. "Miss Brooks." Emma turned. "We found something." He enlarged one of the surveillance photographs. Then another. Then another. All showing Emma over the past 12 years. The analyst frowned. "These weren't all taken by Mr. Moretti." Emma blinked. "What?" He highlighted tiny differences. Different camera lenses. Different angles. Different timestamps. 2 people have been documenting your life. The room fell completely silent. Emma stared at the screens. Someone else. Another unknown observer. Watching her. For years. The butler quietly whispered, "Impossible." The analyst shook his head. "No." He enlarged another image. Different photographer. Different equipment. Different surveillance methods. He swallowed. "Someone has been following Miss Brooks." He looked toward Lorenzo's security feed. Without Mr. Moretti knowing, Emma felt the room spin. "So," her voice cracked. "There were 2?" The analyst nodded. "At least." Suddenly, every monitor flickered. The command center lights dimmed. One screen after another turned black. Someone shouted, "We're being hacked." Another analyst rushed toward the servers. "They're inside the system." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Emma looked toward the only screen still functioning, Lorenzo's security feed. It flickered, then stabilized. Victor Romano smiled. "You built an empire," he said quietly, "but you never noticed." He leaned slightly closer. Someone else was protecting her too. For the first time since Emma had met him, Lorenzo's composure cracked, only for a fraction of a second. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, with genuine surprise. Whoever the second watcher was, Lorenzo hadn't known they existed. Emma realized something terrifying. If the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago didn't know who had been following her, then whoever that person was might be even more dangerous. At that exact moment, every screen in the underground command center went completely black, except one. A single live camera appeared. An old cemetery, heavy rain. A lone figure dressed entirely in black stood beside a weathered gravestone. The figure slowly looked directly into the camera, then held up another photograph of Emma, before setting it on fire. Across the bottom of the screen, one sentence appeared in white letters. "She was never yours." The feed immediately cut to black. No one in the room spoke. Emma's hands trembled uncontrollably. Lorenzo wasn't the only man who had spent years waiting for her. Somewhere in Chicago, someone else had been watching. And now, they had finally revealed themselves. The image disappeared. Every monitor inside the underground command center went black. For 3 long seconds, no one breathed. The only sound came from the rain pounding against the reinforced skylights buried beneath Blackwood Manor. Emma stared at the empty screen. Her own reflection stared back. Pale, confused, terrified. Someone had just declared war. Not on Lorenzo. On everyone. "We've lost the entire network." One analyst slammed both hands onto the keyboard. Our servers are clean. Another shook his head. No, they're not inside. What? They were never trying to steal information. He swallowed. They wanted us to watch. The realization spread across the room. The mysterious figure hadn't hacked Lorenzo's empire to destroy it. He had hacked it. To send a message. She was never yours. Those 4 words echoed inside Emma's mind. She looked toward the security monitor that had finally reconnected. Lorenzo was still standing in the entrance hall, perfectly still. Only one tiny detail had changed. His right hand. It had quietly curled into a fist. Emma realized something. The message hadn't frightened him. It had angered him. Upstairs. Victor Romano noticed it too. He smiled. So, he adjusted his expensive cufflinks. Someone finally decided to introduce themselves. Lorenzo answered quietly. You knew. I suspected. You lied. I survived. Their conversation sounded less like enemies, and more like 2 kings discussing a 3rd ruler neither of them had anticipated. Emma turned toward the butler. Who was that? He lowered his eyes. I don't know. You're lying. No. His voice trembled for the first time. I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 34 years. He looked toward the monitor. I've never seen his face before. A deep electronic tone echoed through the command center. One of the analysts looked up sharply. Boss, another camera had reconnected, not inside the mansion. Outside, the cemetery. Only now, the mysterious man had vanished. In his place, a single white lily rested upon the gravestone. Emma frowned. Why does that flower? Her voice trailed away. She recognized it instantly. White lilies. Her favorite? The same flowers decorating the bedroom upstairs. The analyst enlarged the gravestone. Rain washed across faded letters. Emma leaned closer. Her heart stopped. The name carved into the stone was familiar. Elizabeth Brooks. Her mother? No, Emma whispered. The room suddenly felt too small. Her mother had been buried 8 years ago. Who had been standing beside her grave? Why? Another analyst quickly searched nearby traffic cameras. Found him. The room watched in silence. The black-clothed figure walked calmly away from the cemetery. No hurry. No panic. No attempt to hide. He stopped beside a vintage black Rolls-Royce. Opened the door. Then, before entering, he looked directly toward the camera, almost as though he knew they were watching. Then he smiled. Not cruelly. Sadly, the car disappeared into the rain. Lorenzo's voice suddenly echoed across the command center through his encrypted radio. Emma. She instinctively stepped toward the speaker. I'm here. His breathing remained perfectly steady. Listen carefully. I'm listening. If anyone asks whether you remember your mother during the winter of 2008, he paused. Say, no. Emma frowned. What? Promise me. I don't understand. You don't need to. Lorenzo. Promise. His tone had changed. Not commanding. Desperate. Emma had never heard desperation in his voice before. She hesitated. I promise. The transmission ended. Immediately. Back inside the mansion, Victor slowly smiled. You told her. No, you almost did. Lorenzo remained silent. Victor took another step forward. The winter of 2008. His voice became softer. Interesting choice. One of Lorenzo's bodyguards immediately drew his pistol. Boss? Lorenzo raised one finger. The guard lowered the weapon. Barely. You've hidden it well. Victor continued. But not well enough. What do you want? Lorenzo finally asked. Victor laughed quietly. I already have what I came for. He looked toward the staircase. I know she exists. He slowly buttoned his coat. And now. He smiled. Everyone else soon will too. Without another word. Victor turned toward the mansion entrance. His soldiers followed immediately. No shots. No final threats. No dramatic exit. Within moments, the enormous front doors closed behind them. The gunfight had never truly been the objective. The meeting itself had been underground. Emma stared at the giant map of Chicago covering one wall. She couldn't stop thinking. The bedroom. The journal, the cemetery, the flowers, the message. None of it made sense anymore. There weren't two sides. There were three: Lorenzo, Victor, and the mysterious man. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Lorenzo entered the command center. His black suit was stained with rainwater and streaked with dust from shattered marble. A thin cut marked his forehead. Blood slowly trickled toward his temple. Emma frowned. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." "It doesn't look like nothing." He barely glanced at the wound. "I've had worse." Without thinking, Emma reached into her cleaning apron. She still carried a small first aid pouch. Old habit. Cleaning jobs often meant cuts. She removed an antiseptic wipe. Sit. Every guard nearby froze. Nobody, absolutely nobody, told Lorenzo Moretti what to do. He looked at her. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he quietly sat down. Emma gently cleaned the cut above his eyebrow. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. She noticed how still he remained, almost unnaturally still. "You don't trust doctors?" she asked. "I trust very few people." "And me?" "You touched my face," he answered calmly. "Most people wouldn't dare." Emma smiled faintly. "That's not an answer." "No, it's better." She finished placing a small bandage over the cut. There. Lorenzo didn't move. He simply looked at her, longer than he should have. Long enough that several bodyguards awkwardly looked away. Neither of them noticed. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "The cemetery?" Lorenzo's expression changed immediately. "What about it? Why did you tell me not to remember 2008? Silence. I deserve the truth. You deserve to stay alive. Those aren't the same thing." "No, they're not." She folded her arms. "I'm tired of half answers." Lorenzo slowly stood. His eyes carried something unfamiliar, not fear, regret. "The truth," he said quietly, "is the reason your bedroom existed long before you arrived." Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. "The truth," he continued, "is why I knew exactly what tea you drink." She waited. "And the truth," his voice became almost a whisper, "is why your mother spent the last year of her life telling me to never let you know I existed." Emma stared at him. Her mind refused to process the words. "My mother," she whispered, "knew you?" Lorenzo closed his eyes. For the first time since she'd met him, the cold Mafia boss looked genuinely haunted. "She saved my soul." Emma's breath caught. "What?" "I couldn't save her." The room fell completely silent. Tears slowly gathered in Emma's eyes. "No." She shook her head. "That's impossible." Lorenzo looked directly at her. "I stood beside her hospital bed the night she died." Emma's entire world tilted. Her mother had never mentioned Lorenzo Moretti. Not once. Yet somehow, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago had been there during her final moments. Before Emma could ask another question, every light inside the underground headquarters suddenly turned crimson. A shrill alarm pierced the silence. One of the analysts shouted from across the room, "Boss." Lorenzo turned instantly. "What happened?" The analyst looked pale. "The Rolls Royce." "What about it?" "We found it." "Where?" The analyst swallowed hard. "It never left the cemetery." Emma frowned. "But we watched it drive away." "No." He slowly enlarged the traffic footage. The entire command center watched. The vintage Rolls-Royce had indeed driven away, but 30 seconds later, it vanished. Not behind a building, not into a tunnel. It simply disappeared. Another analyst whispered, "That's impossible." Lorenzo stared at the frozen frame, then quietly spoke one name, "Gabriel." Emma looked at him. "Who's Gabriel?" Lorenzo's face lost all color. "The only man," he said slowly, "I was ever afraid to meet again." And somewhere beyond the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, a pair of unseen eyes watched Blackwood Manor from the roof of a neighboring skyscraper through a high-powered scope. The mysterious man lowered the rifle without firing. His mission tonight was never to kill Lorenzo. It was simply to remind him that the past had finally come home. The command center fell into complete silence. No one dared speak after Lorenzo whispered a single name. Gabriel. Emma searched his face. The man who had faced assassins without blinking. The man who had stood alone against Victor Romano and 50 armed soldiers now looked as though an invisible wound had reopened. Not fear. Something older. Something far more painful. Emma stepped closer. Who is Gabriel? Lorenzo didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the frozen security image of the disappearing Rolls-Royce. Finally, he exhaled. The only person who ever knew every secret I buried. The words lingered in the air. They were supposed to be dead. A stunned silence settled over the command center. Dominic, Lorenzo's longtime head of security, slowly lowered the tablet in his hands. Boss. His voice was unusually cautious. That's impossible. I buried him myself. Lorenzo replied quietly. No one challenged him. Emma watched the exchange. Everything about this mansion seemed built on ghosts. Hidden rooms, secret journals, forgotten promises. Now, a dead man had returned. One of the intelligence officers interrupted. We recovered another camera. The largest monitor flickered. This time, it showed the front entrance of Blackwood Manor nearly 24 years earlier. The footage was old, grainy, black and white. A rainy autumn afternoon. A young woman carrying groceries walked toward the mansion gate. Emma leaned forward. Her heart skipped. My mother, Elizabeth Brooks. She looked younger, healthier, laughing at something beyond the camera. Then another figure appeared beside her. A teenage boy, tall, thin, dark hair. His face wasn't completely visible beneath the rain, but Emma immediately recognized him. Lorenzo. He looked no older than 16. No expensive suit. No bodyguards. No empire. Just a frightened teenager. The footage continued. Elizabeth gently placed one hand on the young Lorenzo's shoulder. She smiled warmly, then reached into one grocery bag and handed him a wrapped sandwich. Lorenzo accepted it without speaking. The screen froze. Emma slowly looked toward him. My mother. He nodded once. Fed me. No one spoke. The command center suddenly felt much smaller. Emma whispered, You knew her before I was born? No. I knew her. His voice softened, when I had already forgotten what kindness felt like. Emma's throat tightened. My mother never told me. She promised she wouldn't. Why? Because she believed children deserved ordinary lives. Lorenzo's gaze drifted toward Emma, and I agreed. Another file automatically loaded. This one wasn't security footage. It was a scanned hospital document. Date, November 18, 2018. Emma froze. The day her mother died. The document listed one emergency contact. Not family, not a hospital worker, not Emma. The name at the bottom read, Lorenzo Moretti. Emma stared at it, unable to breathe. This, her voice broke, can't be real. Lorenzo quietly reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He removed an old leather wallet. Inside was a folded piece of paper, worn from years of being opened and closed. He carefully unfolded it. This belonged to your mother. Emma accepted it with shaking hands. The paper was faded, the handwriting unmistakable. Her mother's, if you're reading this, it means, I'm gone. I know you'll blame yourself. Don't. You kept every promise you ever made to me. Now I need one more. Protect Emma, but never let her know she was ever in danger. Let her believe life was ordinary. Because ordinary is the greatest gift people like us can never give our children. Promise me. Elizabeth. Emma could no longer stop the tears. She covered her mouth. Every memory of her mother came rushing back. Late night tea, warm hugs, quiet smiles. She had never imagined that while she was asleep, her mother had been asking the most feared mafia boss in Chicago to protect her daughter. Lorenzo remained silent. He had carried that letter for 8 years, never once breaking his promise. Until tonight, Emma looked up. You built that room. He nodded. After she died, you filled it with everything I loved. Yes, you watched over me. Yes, you stayed away, so you could have a normal life. Emma finally understood. The bedroom hadn't been created out of obsession. It had been created out of loneliness. Every book, every flower, every photograph, every cup of tea, they weren't trophies. They were memories Lorenzo had collected because they were the closest he allowed himself to be to the promise he could never abandon. A quiet voice broke the silence. Dominic, boss. Lorenzo turned. The Romanos. What about them? They've left Chicago. Lorenzo frowned. Too easy. Dominic nodded. They weren't running. They're clearing the board. Another intelligence officer hurried over. We intercepted encrypted radio traffic. The room listened. Only 3 words had been transmitted. Bring Emma alive. Silence followed. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. They don't want to kill me. No. Lorenzo answered immediately. They finally understand. Understand what? He looked directly into her eyes. You are worth more alive than dead. Emma shivered. Because of you? Because of what your mother knew. Those words hit harder than anything else. My mother kept another secret. Lorenzo nodded. I've been trying to find it for 8 years. The room became still again. This changed everything. Emma wasn't simply being protected. She was connected to something much older. Something Elizabeth Brooks had taken to her grave. Something powerful enough to unite Lorenzo's enemies against her. Later that night, the storm finally began to weaken. Emma quietly returned to bedroom 307. The room no longer frightened her. It saddened her. She slowly walked past the photographs, touched the bookshelf, smiled faintly at the steaming cup of jasmine tea that had been replaced with a fresh one. Lorenzo noticed everything. Even now, footsteps approached. She didn't turn. I knew you'd come. Lorenzo stopped beside the doorway. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. Emma looked around the room. For years, she whispered, I thought nobody noticed me. You were wrong. I know. She walked toward him, stopping only a few feet away. So tell me honestly. He waited. If my mother hadn't asked you, she searched his eyes, would you still have protected me? For the first time, the answer didn't come immediately, because the truth frightened him. Finally, he spoke. I don't know. Emma nodded slowly. I think you do. Their eyes remained locked. Neither of them moved. Neither crossed the distance between them. Yet somehow, it felt smaller than ever before. Lorenzo slowly lifted one hand, almost touched her face, stopped. His fingers hovered only inches away. Emma didn't step back. She simply whispered, You don't have to keep every promise alone anymore. The words struck deeper than any bullet ever had. Before Lorenzo could answer, a phone vibrated inside his jacket. Dominic. Boss. What is it? We found another package. Where? At the mansion gate. Lorenzo's expression hardened immediately. What was inside? Dominic hesitated. A music box. Emma frowned. My mother had one. So did the sender. Dominic swallowed. There was also a note. Lorenzo unfolded the small card. His face became unreadable. Emma quietly asked, What does it say? He handed it to her. Only one sentence was written. The bedroom was never the real gift. Emma looked up. What does that mean? Lorenzo slowly turned toward the rain-covered window. Beyond the gates of Blackwood Manor, dozens of black SUVs silently took defensive positions around the estate. He finally understood. Gabriel had never returned to destroy him. He had returned to reveal the final secret Elizabeth Brooks had died protecting. And whatever that secret was, every mafia family in America was about to start searching for it. Lorenzo gently closed the curtains and looked back at Emma. This time, there was no distance in his voice. No matter what happens next, he said quietly, You are no longer cleaning this mansion. Emma smiled through her tears. What am I doing instead? For the first time since they met, a genuine smile appeared on Lorenzo's face. Coming home. Emma looked around the room that had waited for her for years. It no longer felt like a mystery. It felt like the beginning of a life neither of them had ever expected. Outside, the storm clouds slowly parted over Chicago. But far beyond the city lights, a convoy of black vehicles crossed the state line, each carrying men who had received the same order: find Emma Brooks before Lorenzo Moretti does. The war for Chicago had ended. The war for Emma had only just begun.